Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello everyone. Welcome to our last artist talk of the summer. It's a little bit sad. My name is Julia. I'm the Education Assistant at Lansing Art Gallery and Education Center. Lansing Art Gallery and Education Center has been a staple nonprofit organization in our community for 50 years now, and a leader in public arts creation for 10. And ARTpath is one of those fantastic programs. And its success is due to the hard work of our exhibitions and gallery sales director, Katrina Daniels, and Emily Stevens of the City of Lansing Parks and Recreation. We would like to thank our sponsor today, which is Gary and Nancy McRae, for this wonderful piece behind me. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our wonderful artist, Mr. Michael Magnotta.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and thank you all for being here tonight on this gorgeous evening. I wanted to thank the gallery and the sponsors, and Julia and Barb and Michelle and everybody involved, the other artists, all of you who have come to see the art through the summer and to the talk tonight. I also greatly appreciated the list of topics that we might address during the talk. That was quite helpful. So just to start off briefly, I'm not going to say a whole lot about the piece itself because I do think it kind of speaks for itself. But it's called Heavenly. It's a part of one of the series of works that I do. One of my interests is space and the cosmos, and what more can you say in looking up at the stars and the moon and the sun and the planets than it's heavenly. What I love about it from a sculptural standpoint is the way that it floats, and the way that we have hundreds of pounds of metal that is, as you can see, just balanced and welded onto the moon there. So yeah, the intersection of the pieces, the flow, the dynamics, I like it. I hope you do too. Public art, public sculpture. I feel that this is a very necessary part of every community, and that's why I'm so thankful to those who make it a possibility. We're here in nature sculpture. We've got the trees, the river, the benches, the topography. That's beautiful as well in its sculpture in its own right. But I think adding art to the built environment brings a component to it that is an addition. The utilitarian environment, the architecture, roadways, signage, is all vital and beautiful. They have value, but I think what pieces of art do in the public venue is to hopefully to provoke, and not necessarily in a negative sense by any means, but to help us to see things in a different way. We all experience the planets and the stars and all each night, but this, you're walking through the park, this brings it home, gives you a moment to focus on it and maybe reflect. The public art is as well as I'm thrilled and humbled that my art is considered appropriate to be displayed in a public setting, and with this opportunity, I think, artists displaying public art, there's a responsibility. And I think the first responsibility is that your art has to be safe if the public is intermingling and exposed to it. So you have to take that into consideration. But I think it should also, as I said, be provocative. That it should add to the public discourse and should bring something to the visual patchwork that we all share. The pandemic, just as a matter of the additional benefits to public art in this day and age, we're not only dealing with the pandemic, but multiple areas of concern. People are anxious, sometimes depressed. They're getting out in nature. They're wanting to breathe the air and walk and be free, and so I think all the more bringing public art into the domain assists them in getting away from those troubling thoughts that they may be having. So I think public art enhances the quality of our lives, and more small communities, which I'm very, very thankful for, are undertaking to rent pieces of art and have them installed throughout their community for a year usually. The other, I was the latest issue of Sculpture magazine in terms of answering the question of art in the public venue. They were interviewing several artists, and one answer struck me in particular by an artist, Joana Vasconcelos, a Portuguese sculptor. And she said the goal of art is to create templates as artworks where you can reevaluate who you are and the world in which we exist. And I thought that summed it up pretty well too. I wanted to talk for a minute. One of the topics was how did you get into art? So speaking of my artistic journey, I was raised in a family that really wasn't necessarily artistic, but it was a creative and free-thinking family. And I think that created an atmosphere that allows one to bring forth whatever creative instincts they may have. So my pathway to the arts began in my early 30s, actually, and it was in photography. I took photography up seriously and toyed with the idea often throughout my career of diving in and becoming a professional photographer. Fortunately, in hindsight, that did not happen with the state of professional photography today. But I did dabble in the field. I did weddings, portrait, art photography, and loved it. It gave me a venue for expression that I otherwise didn't have. So the next segue in my journey in art, my wife and I moved to San Diego in 1987, and I was continuing in my profession. I worked for the federal courts, and San Diego, they would have art walks every year, and one year they had a bunch of architecture studios that were open to the public. And in going through those architecture studios, I thought, yeah, this looks like a fun way to spend your working day. So I became very interested. began studying architecture at the New School of Architecture in San Diego, and did so for 2.5 years. I didn't make it to the 5-year degree. Remember, I had a career and just felt at that point that it wasn't meant to be. I loved the classes, and what those studies did was move me in my art from the 2-dimensional photography into the 3-dimensional, the built environment. My first sculpture I actually did was in a design class that I still recall fondly. Quit architecture school. My wife and I moved back to Michigan. I was able to finish out my career with the court system, blissfully retired, and was able then to undertake something that I had been fascinated by for a number of years, and that was welding. I enrolled in a creative welding course at Lansing Community College, taught by a wonderful gentleman, Chris Edick, and he was able to show us how to intertwine the use of these tools, welders, into creating your artwork. As I said, I'd long had a fascination with welding, so was thrilled to be able to learn how to do it. And to be honest, the first time that you pick up a welder and conjoin 2 disparate pieces of metal into something that is now combined, melded together, and something new, is a thrill beyond words, and it's a thrill that doesn't go away. I've been doing it 10 years, and every time I do it, it's just as much fun. So that's how you know that it's the right thing for you. I've also been fascinated by metal throughout my life. I remember as a young boy walking around and picking up the odd, unusual, interesting piece of metal, small typically, and putting it in my pocket and carrying it around or bringing it home and thinking what I might do with it. So I think that was probably predictive of where I am today as well. The other thing that I found fascinating, that I just found out not too long ago, was that a great-grandfather, Vachetti, who in Italy was a metal sculptor years ago. So I guess it may be genetic as well. As my wife can tell you, when you're working on a sculpture, I go out into my studio and get lost in the process. Hours pass, and you're so involved and having so much fun that you don't even realize it. Speaking of the inspiration, themes that I use in my work. Artists are by nature visual, so it's the constant seeing of my environment that my art is responding to. More particularly, though, I do have themes: space, the cosmos, music, jazz, dance, nature, flora, fauna, birds, really whatever is intriguing me at the time. Those are general themes that I come back to again and again, though. It's important, I think, for artists to relate to and find inspiration with other artists as well. Just as an example, I have a good friend who collects some of Mark Chatterley, who you probably all know him, his beautiful pottery pieces, and so I was over at his house and saw just a small piece he's got in his yard about this big. It's a swimmer who's like this, coming up for air from the water, and I looked at it, and it's beautiful just in itself, but what I took from it, and it was in all of Mark's work, and I really appreciate it, is there's movement, there's life in those pieces that he does, and often in metal sculpture, it's can be difficult to bring that part to your work. So anyway, I saw that. I was determined, I want to bring more movement. Went home, had in my metal pile some pieces that had been intended as leaves or pieces of flowers that I was going to do a big stainless steel floral piece. I had given that up already. So the pieces were just there in a pile. You never, ever get rid of anything in metal sculpture. That's the beauty of it. You can use every single piece, and I have. So these pieces are there. They were meant, again, as pieces of a flower, but what they became in my most recent piece that I just finished is a 9-foot ballet dancer. Movement, it's so thank you, Mark. That was, but it's the benefit derived from looking at other artists' work, talking with them, knowing what they're doing. Another example, the importance of mentorship, even if it's not a formal mentorship among artists. Craig Mitchell-Smith, a noted glass artist nationally, internationally, right here in Lansing, Old Town. I've worked with them on a number of pieces, and from the onset of our working together, Craig was ahead of where I was as an artist. But he, and what I learned from him, which was so important, was not to be intimidated in any way about what you may want to do in the artistic sense. He would always say, people come to me and say, can you do this or that? He'd say, of course I can. I've done it a number of times, even though, as he confided, he'd never done it. So you have to have the confidence and be willing to put yourself on the line to do it, and you usually can. And if you don't know how, you'll learn how. So again, it's learning and taking things from other artists that really help your practice. What stimulates my creative process? Everything. I go to museums, love them. Anywhere I go in the world, I can't wait to go to a museum. When I'm at the museum, I can't wait to get to my studio to view the techniques or the sense of creative process and form that I'm seeing. So it's you're everything you're looking at. If you're an artist all the time. It's art magazines, documentaries of artists, travel. Just as a photographer, I know when I did a lot of photography, this is how I approached it. Everything that wherever you are, whatever you see, you are framing it. You are looking at it through the lens of your camera, whether you have your camera or not. So as a sculptor, the environment, you're always seeing shape, color, volume, space, balance, movement everywhere you look, and you take from that and you use that in your work. Again, while I'm not sculpting all the time, every day, my motivation, just like anyone's, has an ebb and flow. But an artist is an artist, whether you're actively creating a piece of work or not. You're always an artist and taking in what you will then put out into your work. One of the questions again was, how do you know when a work is finished? So the idea of completion, and among the numerous things about metal sculpture that I'm totally absorbed and fascinated with, is its malleability. Not its ability to move necessarily, but my ability to move, adapt, change, alter the piece that I've created or am creating. I've had pieces that, in living with them after they're, quote, done, I've made changes, sometimes small, sometimes huge too, long after completion. And again, this is one of the beauties of metal sculpture. You can the changes you make can enhance the piece. Sometimes it's a repair to the piece. Sometimes, as I said, in living with the piece, you have a new perspective on it that you now want to make. And the thing about metal sculpture, as opposed to a number of other artistic endeavors, is that it's so easy to make those changes. You cut apart, grind down, weld together, incorporate new elements, and you can do it in a very expeditious fashion. So that's fun. And again, going from the issue of most recent issue, Sculpture Magazine, in their, again, interviewing a number of sculptors around the world, and another one, her name is difficult, Adjoke Bubiyela. She was born here but raised in Nigeria. Asked this question, when do you know that your piece is finished? I thought her comment was very instructive. You don't know when, and you probably will never know, objects, sculptures, and movements that are finished continue to resonate beyond their physicality in our hearts and spirits. I thought that was beautiful. A beautiful way to answer that question. So yeah, I'm thinking that's about what I have to say, and I again want to thank everyone involved in putting this together, and thank you all for being here, and I would welcome comments or questions if anyone has them.
I've got one for you to start.
Sure.
Okay, so we were actually musing a bit about how you put this piece together, given that it's vertical.
Uh-huh.
Metal is heavy.
Right.
So I was wondering if you could dive a little bit further into how you actually got it assembled.
Sure.
And then for other questions, if
Absolutely.
you don't mind repeating them.
No, and that question also it allows me to talk about another aspect of the way that I work as opposed to other artists. Many artists sketch out, they have their idea, they sketch it out, they execute it. That's not me. My work, while I talked about the themes that my work reflects, it's not like I'm thinking, yeah, I'm gonna draw this bird and it's gonna be like this. That's the way that I work is I go to the salvage yard, the metal salvage yard, and I've got a large pile of my own salvage metal at home now to work with, but you always need more, right? Or paints and paper and so yeah, I'm at the salvage yard, the metal yard, and picking out whatever I see that appeals to me, shapes, textures, finishes, whatever it is that may, oh yeah, that's cool, throw it in the truck and bring it home. When I bring it home, I just lay it out, not necessarily in order, just sometimes in a big pile, and it may sit there for 6 months, it may sit there for a year, or it may only be there 2 weeks. But what happens is that there's a conversation between myself and the metal. I know this sounds I'm not hearing voices, but it is a visual conversation that goes on. Sometimes that metal, like I said, is quiet for quite a period of time. Other times it jumps out and says, yeah, this is what you need to put together. And I'm looking at it again through the visual aspect of my mind of things that I love and want to see and can realize that this is how I'm going to bring that to light, these pieces of metal in this particular way. So that's how I work. It isn't that I haven't done the other way, but it's difficult. I've got a large piece out across from Lake Lansing in the little triangular park that on Meridian Road. It's 3 sailboats, stainless steel sailboats that was commissioned, and it was difficult for me. If I'd have just had that metal and thought, yeah, I want to do a sailboat, it would have been simple. But I had to figure and draw and measure and have everything, how it had to be. So that's a different way of working, and it's, a lot of artists do it, every day, but it was hard for me.
And we thank you for it.
So this piece, again, in the same fashion, what else could you do with these pieces but build heavenly? I mean, it speaks for itself. But so the pieces were laid out, and I just start from the bottom. I didn't necessarily envision the whole piece as it is, but I knew I wanted to start at the bottom and build up and have it flowing and balanced. That's a difficult thing in working alone with heavy pieces like this, is because often this piece wasn't like this because I built this as I went up like this, so it was balanced as I built it up. Sometimes though the pieces are larger and they're laid out on the ground, and I'm welding them together, hoping against hope that when I raise them up, they are as balanced as they appear to me, that I'm putting together, and so far they are. So, yeah. But that's how this piece came about, and that's how I put it together. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm wondering if you worked in any other mediums outside of metal sculpture photography.
After I retired, I fancied myself a painter. I love painting. I love it. I mean, I love to experience painting. I dabbled in it for 6 months and realized that was not the the pathway of artistic expression that I was going to. It was fun. I made some pieces. We've got some in our house hung up, but metal sculpture is where where I belong. Yeah. But good question.
I'd love to hear more about the inspiration you take from the cosmos.
That's a pretty big question, Barb. Let me just give a recommendation. Until the End of Time by Brian. What's his last name? Darn it. Anyway, that's the name of the book. He's an astrophysicist, but it's very, readable and approachable. Excellent book. Until the End of Time. Highly recommend it. But I'm no physicist or astro or cosmologist, but just the whole thing. I mean, what is so fascinating to me? Space. I had started with what I was going to talk about as far as space, but I didn't. I don't think that's why we're here, but just a few little things that I had. Just a note. The universe is not a collection of dead objects, planets, moons, stars, suns, but a community of cosmos creating subjects.
Like the circle. I don't know if you actually found circles.
Yeah, I found those circles. I have a plasma cutter that is the tool of choice for cutting metal into shapes that you want, but unless you have a laser plasma cutter, you can't get precision lines and that sort of thing. So I can do with my plasma cutter, rough shapes that I then have to weld the edges, or not weld, but smooth the edges out on and all. So yeah, when I'm at the metal yard, typically I'm looking for shapes, for geometric shapes. Not always. I mean, if there's wonderful texture there in pieces that are just square or ragged or whatever, it varies. But yeah, you can do a lot with the geometric shapes that you don't have to put into those. It would be difficult. Yeah. Thank you.
Michael? Is there a particular metal that you prefer working with?
Not that I prefer. When I started out, I typically used your rusted metal. I loved that patina, the realness of that. So a lot of and I still do, a lot of my work, and since I'm getting metal from that has been salvaged, it has those sorts of patinas. So but stainless steel I've come to appreciate and now use in quite a few pieces also. Painted, I've got some pieces that I have applied a paint to, powder coated, although that's the ultimate. If you're going to be painting sculpture, you want it powder coated. It'll last forever. It's completely uniform. It's beautiful. it's very expensive. So a sculptor that here again, learn from. I show pieces every year through the Midwest Sculpture Initiative. They're the ones that help to place pieces in the communities throughout this state, Indiana and Ohio. And one of the artists who is prolific and has had a number, I love his work. And I was looking at a piece just a couple months ago as we were installing, and it was painted, and I said, oh yeah, wow, so you powder coated that? No, he doesn't powder coat his work. He, spray paints it, which is obviously a lot cheaper. And the good thing about spray painting, as opposed to, which he pointed out, as opposed to powder coating, you get a clink in something powder coated. There's no easy fix. Spray painted your pieces, you can refresh them every year. So you get a scrape on it. You get out the spray. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be powder coating many pieces in the future. Unless somebody really wants it. Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, I have a question over here.
Sorry.
How large or how small could you go with your work?
That's an interesting question. It's a progression. When I started, obviously, you're not going to start out making something 10 feet tall usually. I started doing, at LCC, they had little scraps of metal that you use, and so I'd make little, desktop pieces like this, and then I got my own metal and welder at home in my studio, and you progress up, you can go from tabletop, although I still make all sizes, from small to this small, but you build up, and you see that you're able to go from there to here, and then to yard size, and now I do a number of pieces that are 10 feet tall. They're shown in Chicago. I've got a piece there through the Chicago Sculpture Exhibition during 2019. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we haven't taken it down. I had 2 other pieces that are waiting in my yard to go the next time they allow us to put them there, and those pieces are all 10 feet tall. So, but yeah, I like working in all the scales. It just depends on what you're trying to do and what metal you have to work with. Yeah.
Have you ever had an apprentice or someone who wanted to work with you and learn?
Have I had? Did you ask? Have I had? Or a couple of my granddaughters. When they visit, we put together some little sculptures that they can take home with them. But no, I haven't really had anyone, come and work with me. I'm probably, not that I'd be opposed to it, but it's my schedule and the way that I work might not be conducive to that sort of, mentoring. I could teach somebody how to weld, though. Welding was not a mystery, but if you don't know how to do it, it looks like kind of a mystery, but it's simple, and it's so much fun. If you ever have an opportunity to learn to weld, man, take it. It's great. Yeah. It's dirty, though. As my wife will tell you, my home studio, which took over our garage, it's a filthy process. But it's fun. You get, you're grinding metal, you know, constantly. And if you'd like tools, to use tools of all sorts, you're going to use them if you're a metal sculptor. You need vices and wrenches and hammers and saws and just you name it. You name the tool you're going to be using. So, it's fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm really glad the weather held up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a wrap on our Artist Talks for this summer. And yeah, and feel free to stay, take a look at the artwork, and have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.